Many thanks for staying with us on Business Edge. And as I told you earlier, we are talking about the fact that Nigeria's presidency said it will be shifting from the national grid to a solar-powered mini-grid, and that is to ensure power efficiency for the country's state house. And of course, we have Collins Iweke, who is a global affairs analyst, who joins us to unpack this. Mr. Iweke, it's nice to have you stay with us on this channel.
Thank you very much, Lekon, for having me.
All right. So a lot of Nigerians have actually raised dust when this particular story came out. Now, is it a shift? When you look at the story and what the president has actually said, now, is the shift away from the national grid to a solar mini grid the problem here, or maybe the amount allocated to it? I mean, we're talking 10 billion naira.
Well, alternative, energy source is not a cheap business. It can be pretty expensive, especially, at the preliminary stage of it. But I don't quite think that the issue here is the money allocated. Of course, we know that corruption and, some, shady businesses, always go around in Nigeria. But let us leave that on the side and concentrate, on the substance itself. The substance being the fact that when the president of a country decides to, move away from the national grid, that is a big deal. It is a big deal because, in more ways than one, it actually indicates, it symbolizes, lack of trust, our confidence in that national grid. But on the other hand, and that is the mixed bag here, Lekon, on the other hand, you also feel that, well, there is probably here an attempt, to have an energy mix that will serve the country better. So it could be that indeed the shift is going to mean something, powerful, something sustainable for Nigeria. Now, the taste of the pudding is in the eating, and that is why Nigerians are actually worked up on the one hand, but also very, very extremely curious to see how this is going to play out.
Well, when you look at the arguments, Collins, now it's been said that the solar project is expected to reduce dependence on the national grid, as you said, and limit the impact of tariff hikes on government finances. But you see, a lot of Nigerians are bothered at the fact that the government should have stayed on the course of ensuring that the power sector is optimized in terms of its operations and delivers quality and accessible and affordable power to Nigerians rather than take itself off it. Now, when you just oppose what the government has said in terms of its excuse and what Nigerians are saying, is it a cost-saving measure for Nigeria, for the Nigerian government? Does it move it towards energy efficiency, so to speak? Or it's more or less like, let me solve my own issue, the Nigerians can deal with the rest?
Nigerians have every reason and very good reasons to be apprehensive about this move. Now, I think it is important to reassure Nigerians that sooner or later, any president, this president or future presidents, would have done what President Tinubu has done now. Now, there may have been some issues around, how it was communicated and the strategy around it. But those are, more or less cosmetic issues, because everywhere in the world, we are seeing, energy mix, whereby you don't rely on one source of energy. Now, to, supply the market, power businesses, power households, and all of that. So, solar, biomass, even thermal energy, hydro energy, these are all different sources. So at some point or the other, Nigeria as a government would have embraced, this. Now, I think when people talk about the fact that this appears to be like some sort of abandonment, well, they also express that, concern that it looks like President Bola Tinubu has given up on the national grid, that there is no hope that, NEPA or whatever other new name it now has, that they don't have any hope, any confidence in it anymore. It is up to, the president to reassure the nation that that is not the case, that what is the case is the fact that they are trying to source for energy through different sources. Whether it happens now or in the future, it is something that every country across the world is doing, but that also, this is equally very, very important, that this is not an elitist move. Elitist move in the sense that ultimately, this renewable energy that, they appear to be embracing now, that it is not something that only the elites can afford, that everyday Nigerians should be able to afford it one way or the other. These are the sort of reassurances that Nigerians need, and they have to come directly from the presidency.
So how might this decision influence other federal institutions or even state governments in their energy choices?
Well, the way it affects them is that obviously the president of Nigeria has given a very, very strong symbol, a very strong indication to, subnational governments, state governments, even local governments, not to talk of businesses, because, long before now, businesses have been migrating away from the national grid. So it now sends a very strong message to, state governments that they can do exactly the same. But I can only hope that when they do so, when they begin this migration, or actually the best solution being retaining the national grid, but also working on the independent source, that the communication will be better than what it was, when the president announced this 10 billion naira budget for the mini grid.
You stressed on affordability of having to diversify and switch to probably the use of solar-powered energies or systems. But then you would recall that a few days ago, the government announced that it would be banning all sort of importation of photovoltaic solar power materials or equipment. And it's trying to ensure that we domesticize the production or the manufacturing of this equipment. Now, how do we balance that? Does it actually reflect the true position or a true reflection of what the government is trying to achieve in terms of ensuring that it is domestically produced and it's affordable?
Well, Leko, I do not have access to the sort of information or the sort of building blocks that, are contained in the decision or in the policy that government has announced. But, as an onlooker with my mortal eyes, I can simply tell you that my assessment is that that policy is ill-conceived. It is ill-conceived because you cannot be talking about, banning something, and the only thing that people have, when you have not shown proof that there will be sufficiency in production in Nigeria of those materials that you are banning. Now, there are reasons to believe, of course, that Nigeria has the capacity for, those solar panels and the other materials needed for alternative energy, that they can be produced in Nigeria and quite seamlessly. I happen to, be living and working in an environment where those are in abundance. The technology have been developed over the years, and I'm talking of about 25, 30 years ago when they started that transition. And so there is knowledge, there is skill, there is technology and engineering to, actually, favor Nigeria with. And I'm not just talking of Belgium where I am, other parts of the world too. So Nigeria is not an island, and indeed they can make that happen. But unfortunately, rather than showing proof that, the government is actually already, not planning, already, importing those technologies and commencing production in Nigeria, they are talking about, outright ban. That is completely ill-conceived and unnecessary.
All right, so even as we look at the issue around capacity building in this initiative, some people are also asking the question that could this initiative spur private sector investment in Nigeria's renewable energy markets? Or are we going to be faced with bureaucratic hurdles and policy inconsistencies, which might actually stifle green business opportunities in the country?
I mean, they have, if we have to rely on the action taken so far by government, I do have reasons to believe that, you know, bureaucracy and policy inconsistencies might hamper the transition to, you know, alternative energy. But of course, like I mentioned earlier, there are, you know, quite some leeway for, you know, investments to be attracted into Nigeria. Mini-grid development for rural and, you know, peri-urban communities modeled on the Aso Rock pilot for state and local government. These are things that can come from, you know, advanced world, the Western world. Solar energy as a service for government institutions, schools, and hospitals. That's also, you know, something to look at. And then there are also technologies around the smart metering and the energy management system. You know, leveraging, for instance, Belgian expertise in automation and digital innovation. Of course, we talked about capacity building and technical training. Nothing stops Nigeria from, you know, going into bilateral, you know, agreements with countries out here. There is no point in reinventing the wheels. People have been doing this before, and in doing so, they have accumulated a whole lot of capacity, knowledge, and skills that are transferable to Nigeria, taking into consideration Nigeria's idiosyncrasies. But of course, the you know, the framework has got to be provided by government, and if we're to judge government by what they have done so far, I think they have performed abysmally, but it is still early in the day, and I believe that they could still make the turnaround.
All right, well, this is an ongoing conversation that we are still going to stay on. But then we want to appreciate you, Collins, of course, Nweke, Global Affairs Analyst, for sharing your thoughts with us. We hope that Nigerians and, of course, the government can get it right in ensuring that we have adequate power supply for businesses and households in the country. Thank you so much for talking to us.
Always a pleasure. Thank you for having me, Leko.
You're welcome.